So today I want to look at the Celtic Cosmology. So what does that mean? I mean, what even is the Celtic Cosmology? So cosmology is the way in which a culture views the world. It's the way in which it sees how the world is structured and its creation and origins. And so today we go in to look and see just how the Celts saw their world. So, Celtic cosmology. Now, the problem here is that we don't have any complete record of exactly how the Celts saw their world. We do have fragmentary bits and pieces of evidence that give us some idea of how the Celts envisaged the world around them, and there are some pieces within the mythological narratives of the Irish and the Welsh that gives us some ideas, but there is no complete record. But we do have some good written records of cosmologies of other related cultures, such as those of the Germanic cultures and the Norse mythology, and the Teutonic tribes that were the original ancestors of the people to which the Norse mythology belongs. Those Teutons were very closely related to the Celts, and they were related by a common Proto-Indo-European culture, which, as we've seen before, shows a lot of commonality between the cultures. So what I'll do is I'll describe the cosmology of the Norse mythology, and then we'll compare it to what we know in regards to the Celtic cosmology, and we look at the commonalities, and we'll see just how much of this is applicable to the Celts. So in this concept, the Earth is surrounded by a huge sea, and in the centre of the Earth is a huge tree, the World Tree. And the tree stretches from the earth into the heavens, and its roots go down beneath the earth and into the underworld. Now at the base of the tree is a spring, and that spring feeds the tree, and the spring is in turn fed by the vast sea that's surrounding the earth. And within that sea lies a great serpent, and that serpent represents chaos, and the sea represents chaos. And so the Sea of Chaos feeds the spring, which in turn then feeds the tree. So the tree is fed from the springs of the Sea of Chaos, and the gods take chaos and they create order from chaos. So every day the gods meet at the base of the tree and they create order from chaos. And that order is the structure of the universe. So when things die, they turn into fruits and nuts on the branches of the tree. And the branches of the tree, they reach out over the seas and they drop into the sea. And therefore, order represented by the tree feeds chaos, and chaos in turn feeds the tree through the spring at the base of the tree. And so we have this cyclical model of the sea being chaos, feeding the tree and being transformed by the gods into structure. And so chaos feeds order, and order in turn feeds chaos. So another important thing to know about the world tree is that it was considered to be the axis mundi of the world. And what that means is that it was thought to be like a wheel axle, with the tree running up to the heavens and down through the land and into the underworld, and the heavens would turn on the axis. So it was the tree that was the axle of the cosmos, and it was the interconnection between the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. Or in the Norse mythology, I believe there were 9 worlds that were interconnected by this tree. But as I've said, the world tree is a concept that belonged to a number of the Indo-European cultures. And so for the Celtic culture, well, we all know that the Celts venerated trees, and trees are very important to the Celts. We also know that the Celts had this threefold idea of the world: that of the sky, that of the earth, and that of the underworld. And so another point worth mentioning is that for the Norse, holy sites tended to be around the base of a tree, or sometimes they would erect a pillar in place of the tree. And there are some buildings whose entire structure is based around the central pillar. And we know that in Norse mythology that this was representative of the sacred tree, the world tree. And we see the same thing with the Celts, that on many of their sacred sites there seems to be evidence of pillars or posts which probably also represented the great central tree. And then there are the Gaulish pillars of Jupiter that we can see erected in certain areas of France around the Moselle area. And although these pillars were erected while under Roman dominion, it's quite clear that there was localized belief systems behind them. The pillar, of course, is thought to be symbolic of the world tree. And there are some extraordinary commonalities with some of these pillars. Around the bases of many are marked the seasons of the year. And Jupiter on the top of the pillar is often seen fighting a huge serpent or sea monster. And that, of course, is symbolic of the gods creating order from chaos that resides in the seas around the world tree. And then in the Irish mythology record, we have the chieftain trees and the sacred trees and the bile trees under which chieftains were inaugurated. And it has been said that of the 5 sacred trees in Ireland, that 4 represent the cardinal directions of the earth, and the 5th represents the centre. Now, in our Norse cosmology, the earth is surrounded by water, and the roots of the tree go down through the earth and into the underworld. And in Celtic mythology, we again see a lot of evidence where people venerate the lakes and the waters as if they were entrances again to the underworld. And so we've got this sea and land over the underworld. And so we can see that given that this model was not only within the Norse mythology, but was common amongst a number of cultures that derived from the Indo-European culture. And given what we know about the Celtic association with trees and what we've learned from the mythological record, I don't think it's too much of a stretch of the imagination to think that a very similar model existed within the Celtic world. We should also remember what Lucan told us about Isis, the god Isis, and how sacrifices to Isis were to be made by hanging. This has a parallel with the god Odin, who apparently sacrificed himself by hanging himself in Yggdrasil, the Norse world tree. And there are many comparisons and similarities between Odin and the god Lugus. So all this goes together, I think, to form a pretty compelling argument that the Celts indeed had a similar cosmology. So you may be asking, why is it so important to know what the Celtic cosmology was? To understand the cosmology of the Celts means to have a far better understanding of the way they saw things, the way they saw the structure of the earth, the way they saw their gods, the way they saw the underworld, the way they saw the structure of their entire universe. And if you understand the cosmology of the Celts, then you take a much bigger step into understanding the minds of the Celtic people